to Archaic Knowledge podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys both here. I'm excited about what we can get into today.
Well, we've had a nice conversation in the back room, so to speak. It's been great getting to know you.
Yeah, yeah.
We met on the eclipse, October 14th, here in Texas. Nickiana Jones, the great rock hound, invited us to come to her aunt's house, and you came all the way down from Austin to get together with people interested in unusual events, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a blast down there at Nikki's, and it was fun watching that eclipse. It was really interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking it'd be nice to start with a biography. You mentioned recently that you're Irish, so let's start with your Irish lineage.
Yeah, my family goes back to Ireland. We came over in the 1850s, around the time of the famine, on cattle barges and came in through Louisiana up into Texas. I actually had a chance to go over to Ireland. It was one of my first handful of trips when I started traveling. Loved the country. It was absolutely amazing. Went back to found the town that my family comes from, which is Castle Pollard. Was able to connect there with the town historian, found records of my family and even the house that they used to live in, which was really interesting. It's still standing, not owned by my family or anything like that, but the names have changed a little bit over the years, right? But that was all very interesting. A lot of fun to have that experience and then explore that country with such a rich history.
Did you find a lot of crazy weather when you were there?
Yeah, I did, and I loved it actually. Everything I don't know, it just really fit my personality and mood, this dreary weather. I love it. The rain and clouds and stuff. And you get some sun. We got some great sun while we were out there too, but everything's just so green.
Mm.
And we got the rain for sure. I just posted today my new Grange and Dolmen videos. I moved it over to Rumble. It's on YouTube, but I just moved it over to Rumble today. So if people are interested, that's up of an old video, which, by the way, go gentle on me, anybody that might be listening. If you watch that video, that was one of my first videos that I ever put out. So you've got me presenting to the camera like, hi, I'm Mike. And today on Wandering Wolf, it's just very awkward. We were much more relaxed with our filming nowadays. So go easy with me on the presentation, but the video stuff is great. I think for that one, we hit New Grange and all the dolmens and stuff up there in every kind of weather, so it was fun.
Yeah, I saw that video. It's fantastic, and Newgrange is astounding. You
Uh,
also, in that same video, you got I think three dolmen sites, and I'm really interested in those. Do you have any slides you can show us on that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think this one here, Polnebron, is probably the most iconic dolmen in Ireland. It's up on a hill. The entire area is covered with all these rocks and stuff. So they used clearly the what was around them here. It's just so clear, that that's not a natural formation, right? A lot of the dolmens and different things that you get into, especially when you get into America, have always explained away as glacial erratics. Something like this is just so clearly, just such a great example of a dolmen.
Now, there's a theory out there that dolmens were built to protect the person inside the dolmen from cosmic rays so that they could have telepathic connection to ET or inner Earth beings. Now, this is pretty out there for a lot of people, but that's one theory because we have to wonder what these are actually for. Academia calls them tombs, or academia says they're hastily constructed structures for protection by primitives. And you're like, well, if they're primitives, how are they lifting these things? And if they're hastily constructed, how did they do it in such haste? Because these are
Right.
huge pieces of stone. So none of what academia says makes sense. How could that be a tomb? A tomb is supposed to keep animals from, this doesn't keep an animal out. So what do you think this is? I mean, I'm sure you have an opinion.
I find it more likely that these were repurposed as most ancient sites have been over thousands of years. A lot of dolmens do have remains in them. I probably like to think that that's more likely that they were repurposed at a later date for a burial site, perhaps. As to their original purpose, I would probably, with all due respect to anybody who's has these theories, because I never want to negate on ideas and pursuing those ideas. I think there's value in in pursuing all ideas and questions, but I would have to probably negate any type of theory, at least in terms of my personal opinion around these being used for protection or anything like that. If you had the ability to lift stones on this level and this type of scale, you'd have the ability to create fortifications and different types of stuff to where you wouldn't even have to worry about that. I think if you're a culture that's advanced enough to do this, you're probably at the top of the food chain. I don't think that you're at the lower end of the food chain anymore where you're worrying about predators in your area. I think you've mastered your surroundings at that point. I'm really focused on documenting all these to generate questions for hopefully smarter minds than mine to come in and present some theories. But I absolutely do have my own thoughts on quite a bit of stuff around the world. There's no way to like travel to all these sites and not create your own opinion. But the dolmens do kind of remain a mystery because you have a wide variety of, shapes and types, some with 3 points, 4 points, some with very large. Now, Ireland, and I'll just go ahead and move forward here in the clip to
Yeah.
show you a great example of the differences in dolmens. So if you're looking at this one right here, it's very square and very erect, balanced. But when you move on from this, and I'll slowly scroll through so people can see what's going on here. When you move on from here to our next dolmen, which is Browns Hill dolmen, you'll see it's very different. Now, this dolmen I love to use in reference to the balanced rock dolmen in up on the East Coast in New England. It's almost exactly similar from the balancing points down there at the bottom. Now, this one has collapsed, but you can easily recreate that in your head in terms of what this would have looked like when it was stacked together. But it has a very different feel than the other one. But a lot of that may be due to the type of stone that they were using. You're up in the hills there in Ireland for Polnabron, and here at the Browns Hill Dolmen, you're kind of out in some rolling hills and plains and farmland. The other area is very rocky, hilly. You're going up and over hills and cutting through rock formation, whereas here you're in flat land and farmland. So there is a different type of stone being used at those two sites.
It's interesting that they are using crystalline material to create a space that's big enough for a person. Many dolmens are just big enough for one person. Some you could fit a few people into maybe, but so a person gets in there. Presumably that's the reason that they set these up, and they have this really thick roof of crystalline material that's doing something for them. Academia says it's a shelter. It's like, well, for one person.
I think we can logically cross off the shelter argument. Doesn't make sense for the type of person living in any area that might be worried about or existing in a time period where you're worried about either attacks from other people or animals. This seems very impractical.
And if it's for rain, you've got one person protected from rain, kind of, unless the rain's going horizontal, which it does in Ireland. And then the rest of the tribe is wet.
Well, and you can build a much better structure out of smaller stones, which we see examples of in Skellig Michael with the beehive constructions and different stuff. If you want to build something out of stone, there's much easier ways to do it than lifting megalithic blocks and stones that weigh dozens of tons. Some of these are just massive, as you can tell. I'm standing next to that dolmen right there. I'm 6'3". 240 pounds, 230 pounds. These are massive. It makes me look tiny.
Could this be an example of ancient human ingenuity, of ancient human engineering? Could humans lift those stones up without a crane using wooden levers or stuff like that? Do you think this would be possible, or how do you envision this?
One of my favorite theories that I've seen presented, and I don't know where this originates from, but I remember it sticking with me from a comment in one of my videos someone left, was that if you found stones in a certain placement, or maybe the largest one, and you built up earth around it, you could move balanced stones underneath it and then dig away all the dirt. But again, that would mean there used to be a massive hill right there for the largest rock to have been resting on for them to build underneath piece by piece and then remove the earth. I don't know, could people manage maybe the ones I'm standing next to? Yeah, but when you start looking at that bigger one and then the placing on these dolmens, the placing them on top of the other stones and the balancing there, you do start getting into some more advanced modes of thinking in terms of how to make that happen. Probably one of the biggest disservices to our thought processes when it comes to trying to understand things like this, whether it's dolmens, the pyramids, or whatever it is, these great questions of how did they do it, is by assuming that human progression has been on this linear scale of advancement. I don't think that we have been on this linear path of advancement as a people, as a human race. I think that we've had possibly several, but at least one up and down, where we've been advanced in the past, advanced enough to clearly to do incredible works that have lasted thousands of years that we don't produce or do anymore.
In Peru, we have the three levels of engineering, and the bottom level is advanced, very advanced. The next level is less advanced, so more recent is less advanced, and the very recent one is even less advanced than that. So we have the evidence that advanced cultures in the distant past were extremely intelligent as regards dealing with crystalline material, whether you subscribe to the theory that these were concrete blocks or natural stones that were manipulated in some way.
In regards to what Mike said regarding the development of different civilizations across the globe and the linear interpretation. So I personally don't think that cultures or civilizations across the world reach the same level of development. Out here in the West and pretty much all over the world, you can see the advancement and the development of our civilization, whereas in many other places, people are living like 2000 years ago. There are still people living at hunter-gatherer level at this point in time. So there's always a discrepancy, and there's always a chance for a more sophisticated, advanced civilization to arise somewhere on Earth, and influence all the other civilizations, be it peacefully through teachings or through the power of the sword.
And by the way, as far as manipulation goes, what do you guys think about the idea that in legend across the world, there's many legends that stones have been lifted by levitation, perhaps by sound frequency?
Well, you have legends of sound doing an incredible thing in all sorts of different cultures. I mean, even in the Bible, walls of Jericho being an example. They're doing amazing things with levitation right now with sound. There's videos going around social media and on the internet right now of them using sound to fixate objects at a singular point and move it in precise movements with robotics and sound. It's a fact that you can levitate and do things with sound. They're doing work like that right now, but it's at a small level. A very small level on these things that I keep seeing that are being created in labs or wherever. Yeah, so I mean, scale that up. It's possible. I couldn't tell you how to do that. We certainly don't have anything that I'm aware of that we're using in terms of modern conveniences with sound, which I think is the effects of sound are, what is it cymatics? That stuff starts getting really interesting to me, to see the effects of sound on matter and the way you can use it to shape things. That's a very interesting topic. It's an interesting question because it opens up a lot of different things that delve into different types of technology and advancements that, I mean, obviously that shatters the narrative of what we understand in terms of history.
Right.
If something like that were to be established, that's how things were done. When you get to these dolmens, I think it's, you start getting into a lot of conversations around a lot of these ancient sites around the world. Some places are clearly cut, in my opinion. Other places do very much look like they were perhaps geopolymer or poured, that they had an understanding of creating concrete type stones that are just much better than what we understand. To the point that we're looking at it as natural at this point. There's a lot of different possibilities, but when you look at the dolmens here that we're showing, these look like these are rock. Most of them perhaps found and used in their natural shape and state to create these things, mostly all over the world. I don't see a level of uniformity that tells me that there's some specific style other than the placement of them on top of each other. If you could carve the rocks for these dolmens in such a way, why wouldn't you make them more unique or uniform or square? For example, why wouldn't you square it off in a way? And I will say this, when you start getting into the unanswered questions and the mystery of it, I mean, that's the exciting part of all this. And this is definitely what's inspired me to go around and document in as many places as I've been able, and hopefully continue to be able to do.
Right. And you've been to so many sites. I mean, it's astounding. I mean, it's just the amount of work you've done just to get to the sites, and then you make these great videos. It's really fantastic for us because we're trying to get out of the thought
Thank
control
you.
matrix, and you're helping us get out. So that's really great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, and getting to some of these places is part of the fun, right? You know, I always like to say when I started doing this, I knew I couldn't get the best film. I wasn't good enough yet. I had no experience. You know, there's a lot of things that I knew that I couldn't do, but what I could do was get to some of these places. I knew that I had it in me to get to some of these places that people hadn't been yet.
Yeah.
Because it's either hard to get to or it's dangerous. And these were things that I just didn't mind uh, putting, since these scenarios that I didn't mind putting myself into. It was exciting and fun, and that slowly developed into hopefully some good film work that people are starting to appreciate, I think. So, I've gotten better at the filming and drone work and stuff just by continuing to hammer away at getting to these places and just do it.
You've done some research on Coral Castle. We were talking about the sound frequency connection. So the idea is that Ed Leedskalnin built Coral Castle single-handedly, and that some children saw him working. He was very private about his building, so he didn't want anyone to watch him. But these
Yep.
children at night saw him working. They climbed the wall and looked down and watched him. And they said he had upside down ice cream cones in his hands that were stones. Their narrow part was at the top. So he was using these cones, pointing the cones at the stones. So two little crystalline stones in his hands were what he was using to levitate these massive coral blocks, is what these kids said who watched him. So we have that testimonial evidence that someone figured out how to use energetic levitation to work with massive blocks. Because how is this 100-pound guy by himself moving these massive blocks? I mean, when even the cranes that we have, the best cranes that we have, couldn't move the biggest blocks that he moved.
Right.
They can barely move the smaller blocks that he moved. So at least we have that in the modern times. And then we have legends from Tibet, the monks using these long trumpet-like instruments that were supposedly able to lift these massive blocks hundreds of feet up. And so we have the stories, the testimonials. So Roz, what were you going to mention?
Looking at the dolmens, I find them pretty similar to the balancing megalithic rocks that are scattered all over the world. There are some examples in Finland or different parts of the world where there are, megalithic blocks just standing on smaller blocks. And those, I don't know, they weigh so much, I don't see 100 men lifting them up. So my question for Mike is, do you find they're somehow related, the dolmens with the balancing megalithic stones?
Yeah, I guess I'd have to maybe look at a specific place that you're talking about. I think anytime you start getting into these megalithic stones and these blocks and structures, we're talking about work on a scale that is not compatible with what we're being told about history. The problem is the dates. The dates don't work. The possibility that this is so ancient that it's been weathered down into like this unkind of recognizable feature. Well, there's plenty of examples of sites around the world where you have that going on, and it's not argued because it's supported either in its positioning around other stuff that isn't weathered. But when you find something like this all by itself, it does make you think, and I do think that these are the type of things that are worth exploring, right? Stuff like this. So the timelines are all wrong. Are clearly the ability of ancient peoples to do incredible works is far beyond what the kind of narrative of progression of advancement supports.
That's why I referenced the balancing rocks, because I felt they're different than the actual dolmens that to me look like, landmarks with a specific purpose. I don't know exactly what is, but I feel like the ancients wanted to leave their legacy and signal us something, show us something through those dolmens. There is some written evidence, pretty debated, about people of bigger stature from the past. As I'm looking at formations that are out of place here in Romania, I usually found stuff also on top of mountains. There are mountains that are just, plain. They're just like plains. There are no rocks, but on top of the peaks, there are some stone formations. Usually they're not in place, they're pretty much wrecked, destroyed. But for me, it raises questions. How did those rock formations pop up on top of mountain peaks where there aren't any stones on a mile radius?
I feel like at this point, mainstream archaeology has so discredited itself with the shutting down of ideas and different things that have been proven wrong about stuff, that everything should be questioned. Everything that we find that looks interesting and has been explained away as a natural formation should be reconsidered and explored. There is no lose. So when people come against or rail against this as if the question's already been answered, I disagree. And, continue to ask the question. So could we be wrong? Could Jimmy be wrong about the Richat structure? Could we be wrong about the Sage Wall? Absolutely. But by investigating it and researching these things, you're ultimately contributing. The end result is going to contribute one way or another. We're going to have a greater understanding and knowledge and awareness of these natural processes and formations that would create these incredible structures, and thereby contributing to modern geology, archaeology, or whatever it is, or we're going to make some incredibly new discovery. And I don't look at it as a failure. If we find one thing, if you're out there researching and you're looking into this stuff, and you find something that can completely disproves your theory, well, you've done the work, and that can be contributed to the natural side of it as well. We're learning and growing together across the board. There's always going to be people that see something and think it's a thing one way or the other. There's
Right.
no way around that. But if you're doing the work, it's going to end up somewhere contributing to something. So there, in my opinion, there is no lose by asking these questions. So when you see something out there that's incredibly unique, and this is something that I always want to encourage people, anybody that I interact with, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and send me emails or direct messages and stuff, wanting to share pictures with me, telling me that they're avid hikers and explorers, and they've been going out for 20 years up in New England or up in the West Coast or wherever it is and exploring, and they've taken all these pictures. Any of us can do that, and we should.
Mhm.
And contribute to the conversation. Maybe it gets explained away, and maybe it is a natural formation. Cool. Well, we've just documented something new and something interesting. And if research is done on it, perhaps we gain more information that contributes to our understanding of natural formations and the way the world works. And if it's not natural and we're able to discover that, we are contributing to what we're all trying to do, which is gain a greater understanding of our history and our past that feels like it's been hidden from us.
Well, clearly something's going on in the distant past on Terra that is outside the academic box. So if I were a student, a young person, 18, 20, 22, and I wanted to pursue archaeology, I'm not sure if going into the university is the best plan, because you're going to get
You're
ideas
going to
that
get shut down.
they're inside a box that is quite narrow. So it's not that everything in the university education is wrong. I'm not saying that at all. There's a lot of great things that we've already got to. We've got to a certain point of knowledge, and that's great. But we need to allow ourselves to be outside that academic box. So I think what you just said is so important. The last 3 or 4 minutes of what you just said is the key to everything that is important in the pursuit of this incredible mystery that is our planet,
Yeah, let me just say this too, for any of your listeners and viewers. The main thing that I want to do with my work is document, present, and encourage. I want to encourage people to do their own work, find their own passions. And let me just be very, very clear when I say this. You don't need permission to go do anything around any of this, whether it's filming, taking pictures, exploring, going to your own site and visiting yourself, establishing your own opinion. You don't need permission from anyone. And your opinion and what you think is valid, explore it together, become a part of a community, get plugged in with people that are like-minded in terms of exploring the truth and looking for answers. and you know, the argument so often is that your opinion isn't valid because you didn't go to school, or you aren't educated in this or that. Don't be afraid of being wrong. Somebody may say, yeah, that's easily explained as this type of geological thing. Cool, you just learned something new. Apply that to the next time you go out,
Well, let's
whatever it is.
that's so key. And let's zoom through the dolmens in Ireland and then get to this. If you have the slides, let's get to Puma Punku and Tiwanaku.
Sure, sure. I don't know if this is showing right now, but this is
Yeah,
just a quick comparison
yeah,
of dolmens. Obviously, we just saw this. This is the brown-tailed dolmen in Ireland. This
yeah.
dolmen here is in Korea, and this is balanced rock up in New England.
Right, right, right.
So on three different continents and three different parts of the world, we've got these very, very similar dolmens here to look at in terms of size, placement,
Right.
and everything.
It's
Um,
astounding how thick the roof is on some of these dolmens.
right? Yeah, and these are always fun to go visit and look at. You know, I feel like dolmens kind of are criminally overlooked a lot of times in favor of places like Baalbek or Egypt, which we all love to focus on. But there's a ton of really good little things like this in terms of ancient history and stuff that's worth exploring.
Right,
That are definitely worth your time to get into and learn about. But these are found on every continent in the world, as far as I know. I think that's correct. You can find dolmens on just about every continent on the world.
right.
They're in high concentrations in all sorts of areas, and I think once these start being proven or accepted as for what they are in America, you know, that's a great way to start opening up that conversation and changing the narrative about prehistory here in the Americas.
Shout out real quick to Julie Ryder, because she has done so much work and documenting ancient sites in Montana with her husband Bill Ryder. That's Julie at Sage Wall, and you've done a lot of work at Sage Wall, and you just did an amazing interview with Jimmy Corsetti just yesterday, which I watched, and it was absolutely phenomenal the amount of work you've done at this wall. So I just want to do a shout out to Julie because she invited me up. I spent 3 days with her and Bill and checked out the site and went to, Starfire Duolith and other places. And I know that you've spent a lot of time up there doing your own research, which is so impressive, Mike. I'm so impressed with what you've done, and you've got 340,000 views on your drone footage of Sage Wall. I mean, it just blew up like crazy.
Yeah, one of those videos really took off. I can't remember why. Well, Jimmy, once it was already doing really well, but once we did a collab video for his channel that really just shot it off. And then
Yeah,
I think Joe Rogan tweeted it out, and that just anything Joe Rogan touches is going to go viral. So,
right.
and what a pleasure to bring attention to the site up there, and those different areas. Montana is a very interesting space to explore, and now that it's gaining more awareness, it's such a pleasure to hear about all the people that are going up there and visiting it, and all these other YouTubers and different people that are going up and documenting it. I absolutely applaud anybody and everybody who's up there doing the work,
Right.
showing this place to people, and you know, inviting more conversations. I think we need more ideas and thoughts and everything around it, which is great. And I absolutely want to shout out to Chris and Linda, the property owners up there at Sage Wall, because they're just wonderful people, and opening up their property. They didn't have to do that to allow people to come up there and view that wall. It's just, you know, hats off to them. It's awesome.
Most of the sites in Montana under the umbrella of Montana Megaliths are on public land, but your friends there, they opened up their own land to people to come to see stuff.
Yeah, right. How awesome is
Right,
that? Yeah, they discovered the wall, I think over 20 years ago, and have slowly but surely been clearing that area away
right,
and doing the work, creating trails out there on their properties so people could walk up there and see it, and just doing that work around there to make it a place where people can come and visit. I do want to preface, you can go visit it, but you do have to make an appointment. So if there's interest in going up and seeing the Sage Wall, don't just show up. You can't just show up there like it's
right.
uh, public land or something where you can go hiking or something, you have to schedule an appointment through their website, which is sagemountainCenter.org.
I think it also behooves us to remember that every researcher that's delving into the ancient past has legitimate views of their own, that they have reasons for having, and that we should always, as you've been saying, keep our minds open to the questions that every single researcher is posing. If we think that we have the only answer, I think this could be another box next to the academic box that we need to then get out of again. Let's keep our minds open
Right.
and asking questions. And I want to ask you a real quick question. You've done research at Sage Wall that leads you to believe that these blocks might be geopolymer. And as we go toward other sites in this talk that we're having today, Puma Punku, Tiwanaku, Baalbek, I want people to keep their minds open to the possibility that these might be geopolymer creations. Academia tells us that Egyptologists, for instance, tell us that the Egyptians came up with copper chisels, but didn't know how to make concrete blocks.
Right. Right.
Why would a primitive people come up with copper chisels before they figured out how to mix concrete? It makes no sense whatsoever. So I think people in general, when they're looking at ancient sites, should keep their minds open to the possibility, at least, that these might be concrete and not natural stones that were worked.
Yeah, I don't know if they're geopolymer. I don't know. I like to put everything on the table and explore those ideas. Um, but Sage Wall is very interesting. When I walked up on Sage Wall, it kind of first the most comparable reaction that I could give um, to my experience of the first time I walked up on Sage Wall was walking up on Sacsayhuaman in Peru. It felt very similar in terms of size and structure. Now the joints aren't fitted as well. I think if we have a man-made wall here at Sage Wall, it's incredibly old and has been incredibly weathered down and eroded. So I think going from the premise that it's a man-made wall,
Right.
I think you also have quite a bit of natural weathering, erosion, and effects on the wall as well. So you kind of have to look at, like, there's both things going on here, because you do have cracks going down the length of the wall, but from top to bottom, that make no sense in terms of structure. And those look like cracks. You can see that they're cracked through points that were solid pieces,
Right.
almost rectangle type stones, as is seems to be the pattern there on that wall. So it's a wonderful mystery, and the more that we're digging into it, the more it's like what a fun process. Been working with Chris there at the site for a couple of years. The wall is highly magnetic, so you can throw a magnet on it and it just sticks to the wall.
Yeah.
We've had a geologist look at it. We've had a geophysicist look at it and do the ground penetrating wall and stuff. And so we're getting all those results back lately, which has been very exciting. We know that there's some kind of reflector underneath 15 to 20 feet down that we're getting imaging back from, that would, now there are multiple theories. It could be a water table, which we were told is highly unlikely, but still a possibility. At that depth, bedrock or some type of foundation. But
Right.
as you know, this is part of the process, continuing to gather that information so that we can have more to look at. For me, what is very intriguing about Sage Wall is clearly the wall, but the surrounding evidence in terms of the cup hole marks all over the place. There's areas that I found that are comparable to Egypt. And in fact, I can show you a picture real quick of one of the comparison photos
Yeah.
from Sage Wall.
That'd be great.
And the picture that I took with in Egypt. So I've got that up here, and I'll share that with you guys here on the screen. On the left is Sage Wall, and there on the right is from Karnak in Egypt. Now, I don't know if I'd even, I mean, this would have stood out to me as unique anyways, but I had just been in Egypt about 6 months prior. And so this really stuck out to me because what you have here, can you see my mouse or is it just the picture on the
Yeah,
screen?
we can see your cursor. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a square cutout. Now this is really hard to tell just from the picture. You can see the shapes here, but that's why I want to make sure I'm showing you here. There's a square cutout here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just like this,
Yeah.
you have a channel running through here,
Right.
and that groove, that channel, is very clear in person.
Okay.
This is a circle, just like some of the other circles and cup holes that I've found in the area, and it's the rock breaks off right here.
Okay.
So that's why you're not seeing the completed circle, but this actually dips down right here. This is broken. All this is broken and then drops off.
Okay.
But you can see how clearly the shape is, and compare, how comparable it is here to the picture that I took in Karnak.
And this
Yeah,
is
it's pretty similar.
near the sage wall. It's not right
Right
at
next to it. Right next to it.
right next
Wow.
to. Okay.
Yeah. And if I go, so first of all, you can see the straightness there. But as you get into, and just look at that, that's a 6 foot tall person down there.
Right.
And there's from above, it just becomes even more impressive. And so we've got that example there that I showed before. And here's a great example of some of the cup holes that you can find in the area. You have some carved out spots within the stones all over the place, just like this. Little nubs and stuff around the area also as well. There's a better shot of the cup holes. Some more there. And the wall is just so impressive, obviously. There's one. And this, as we come up, you'll see is right in front of the wall. So, I mean, this stuff, it's just right there next to the wall that where I was finding all of this stuff. So if you go visit, make sure up here at the top of the wall, check something like that out right there. It's a lot of fun to explore, and a lot of these things you just have to be very aware of what you're looking for, because all of this stuff was full of debris. That whole area, you have a lot of debris. Their seasons can be pretty tough, so it's, there's a lot of debris every year that, Chris has to go up there and clear to keep the site maintained. So it's quite a bit of work.
Well, when I was in Serbia, because after I spent time in Bosnia, I traveled to Serbia, Croatia, different places, and there was a bunch of tunnels that were ancient tunnels that some friends in Serbia showed me. And it turns out that the Romans found thousands of tunnels. They recorded the tunnels, but now they're all grown up with foliage, and there's only a few tunnels left that anyone knows the entrances to, and they know the locations to only a few of the ones that the Romans documented. And the Romans didn't build any of those tunnels; they just found them in Serbia.
Right.
And so the foliage covers them up, and then we're just doing our thing. We're on our cell phones and walking past ancient sites all the time. We don't even know what's going on our own planet. And so this is key that you're doing this, and it's key that your friends have cleared the site around Sage Wall. It's fantastic, so that people can come in and marvel at what went on. And yes, the mystery draws us because it is so bizarre to live on a planet that we think we're the first advanced race, and we think we're the first ones to do anything interesting. No, the ancients did some stuff that's way beyond what we can do. I mean, it's astounding.
Yeah, the danger is thinking that we're the smartest that we've ever been. you know, um, that
Well,
we're the smartest that as humans that we've ever been in history.
exactly.
But that's the thought process when you follow this
Yeah.
scale of progression that's taught that, from primitive to now, that creates this mindset of that we are advanced, and everything from our technology to our understanding of things, which I think is, clearly not the case.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
NASA has on their website that the only place that we have found life in the universe is on Earth, even bacterial life. And they say, but we're looking, and it's like, you're looking because every time the UFO comes into the frame, you turn your cameras off. So I don't think you're looking. We live in a universe teeming with life as far as the evidence goes. We're in the academic box tells us that because the academia depends on NASA for their space info. So it's like academia says, we're the first advanced race. Everything you see must be natural or built by primitives. Really? Primitives built pyramids? Primitives.
Right,
This
right.
this is absurd, and we have to just jump out of that box and go, okay, now what? Well, we're going to ask some questions. We're all going to ask questions, and we're going to do our best. We're all human. We're just human, but we're going to do our best by asking questions. And what you said about anyone being able to go out onto the land and make their own video and make their own decisions about what they think and put that up on the internet. Fantastic. That's what we need. We need more information, more information. So let's go to Tiwanaku, let's go to Puma Punku and see what you think about
Uh,
those.
I would also like to add something regarding the Sage Wall, and I would like to ask Mike regarding the age of it. How old do you think? I mean, do you suspect this landmark is, Mike?
I think something like this would have to be ancient. So, I think we'd be working on a scale back to the, working around these theories about 10, 11,000 years ago, stuff that, I think Graham Hancock's done a lot of work on establishing as far as timelines.
Oh,
But this would predate, the level of weathering. If this is a man-made wall, the level of weathering and erosion on it clearly indicates it being incredibly old.
Right.
The
And
easiest thing, the easiest thing
we
to do
can.
is just look at something and ask yourself, well, is it megalithic? This is, and so that immediately puts it back thousands of years.
well,
You
we
know,
have glacial activity in the last ice age that goes down because the glaciers came to a certain point in Montana, and it's just about where the Montana megaliths start. So you could say, well, maybe the glaciers didn't get that far down because if they had, they would have taken down that whole site and it would have been rubble, but they're not, everything's still standing. So what that means is that if the glaciers didn't get quite to where the Montana megalith site is, if they stop just north of it, then that could be way more ancient than 12,000 years ago or 11,000 years ago. It could be 20,000, 50,000, who knows how many years ago it could have been created.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
if it's really man-made, and if there's been some kind of settlement there, some kind of civilization, how far should we dig to find evidence of such a culture? How far do you think we should
As
go?
far as far and as deep as it takes, I think. I think with Sage Wall, doing that ground penetrating radar gives us a goal for the future of excavating, hopefully eventually down to that 15, 20 foot mark and seeing what's down there. Because it'd be really interesting to see what's under 15 to 20 feet of that earth down there at the bottom. Because if anything is preserved underneath all of that, what a find, right? And some of this
Yeah.
just, you know, a lot, people want answers and they want them quick. But that's not really how this works. The process of just getting to the point where we're at now with getting some of these results has taken several years. And it would take I think some of it can speed up as interest grows, but that's why I feel like it's so important to keep bringing, stuff like this to the attention of people and to a wider audience. As support grows, interest grows, support grows, around, some of this takes money.
Right.
And right now, uh, we're in a process where things are happening, and that's great. And hopefully it's a snowball effect that just continues to grow and grow and grow.
The more people interested in the Sage world, the more hypotheses that come to light, and the broader the perspective gets. So in my view, so I pretty much enjoy entertaining the idea of giants building it. And when I talk about this, I like to reference the Bible, where there is extensive talk about larger beings, especially during the exodus of the Israeli people, and when they went to to conquer the promised land. And also, I think the most powerful references are from Numbers. It describes the battle of the Israelites against the Philistines. So in Numbers, it's mentioned about the people who dwell in the land, who are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large.
Okay, just so people know what we're looking at right here, this is Starfire Duelith, and there's many features up there near Sage Wall that are obviously constructed, and there are researchers who have also advanced the geopolymer theory for these structures. So Mike, you're not alone in suggesting that that Sage Wall, for instance, could be geopolymer blocks, that geopolymer being concrete. And so I just wanted to let people know that this is called Starfire Duelith, and there's lots of documentation of various sites, features like this up in the Montana Megaliths. So I'm just gonna exit the share screen, and then we can get back to other pictures that you guys want to put up.
Yeah, so I don't know how much you guys believe in the Bible reference, but it's pretty much the best written reference that we have in regards to those beings. There's also, the Book of Enoch, that's been a holy scripture until the 3rd century AD, when they pretty much removed it. And in there it speaks of the Nephilim and the fallen angels. But it's pretty interesting because the Old Testament, it's built entirely around this narrative, the Yahweh getting rid of the seed of the Nephilims, the giants that escaped. And there are extensive passages in the Bible, especially in the Numbers. They mentioned, so besides Goliath, that was a 9 feet and 9 inches giant, roughly 3 meters tall. There were also the relatives of Goliath, his cousins, brothers, and all that. And it's mentioned in the Bible. I don't know how many people know about this, but in 2 Samuel 21, 15 to 22, the passage recounts the slaying of 4 giants in Philistine battles, who were said to be descendants of the giants in Gath, which was Goliath's hometown and one of the largest Philistine cities. So it's mentioned about Sap or Sipai that was killed by Sibakai. Also a giant with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot that was killed by Jonathan, the son of David's brother. Lagmi, who was the brother of Goliath, that had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. This giant was killed by Elahan. And then another unnamed giant, also descendant of the giants killed by David's nephew, Jonathan. Also in 1 Chronicles, there's another account that mirrors the passage in 2 Samuel, detailing the defeat of the Philistine giant by David's men. Again, this giant is unnamed, but they were usually up to 10 feet tall, like 3 meters. And those are mentioned in the Bible. They also had fortifications, and the Israelites were pretty fearful because they looked like grasshoppers compared to them. And this is pretty much the Same reason they wandered in the desert for 40 years, because they were fearful when they first saw the promised land. And also the people inhabiting this area, they're really afraid. So they doubted that Yahweh could protect them and help them in their conquest. So that's why all who doubt this had to perish in the desert, wander in the desert for 40 years. So once they died, the new campaign was with the people who trusted that Yahweh could give them the promised land.
Well, Roz, I think your point is that because humans that were larger than normal humans today existed, that they could have been manipulating and building these larger structures that you and I and Mike would have a lot of problems putting up, like these dolmens and Sage Wall and other places, right? You're talking about the ability of larger humans or human-like species, right?
Yeah.
Whose skeletons we have found on the planet to have been building these. And that's a good point. But I think we should probably zoom on to Puma Punku, if that's okay, and Tiwanaku, because
Sure, but
we only have another 45 minutes.
sure, but one quick question. Do you
Yeah.
think it would have been possible for, 10 feet tall human-like beings to construct all those megalithic walls? Do you think it would have been
Every
possible?
major culture around the world, all these have these older tales of giants on every continent around the world. And I find it interesting, having traveled through Egypt, and you look at a lot of the depictions, certainly looks like they're depicting giants on these um, in these scenes, you know, with a lot of normal sized people around them. And there's so many drawings like that throughout Egypt, all over the place at multiple sites. They show them carrying um, stones and all sorts of different things that dwarf in those same pictures what look like regular sized people, you know. Yeah, I mean, and you have carvings from is it
Sumer and Assyria as well.
right, holding lions and stuff, and they look like cats in their arms, and are
Yeah,
these just fanciful depictions of strength and power for rulers, or are these actual giants? And
precisely.
I know that typically we don't carve things into stone to what's the word? I don't know. That's really hard to say, but you find these things all over the world. These either legends or these depictions that show us in scale as being much smaller in comparison. And you have Egypt's a perfect example. You have depictions of these giants moving stones and stuff, and certainly in things like the Book of Enoch and stuff, you have tons of examples of and within description being described, these giants being described within the Book of Enoch, and as you said, the Nephilim is how they refer to them then. But yeah, I mean, if there was something that was a giant or something that could absolutely lift, that seems like that would make things much more possible in terms of moving some of these things.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Book of Enoch. Roz is a big fan and researcher of the Book of Enoch, and so you guys are definitely on the same wavelength. And I'm so into the giant pictures. I haven't done the research Roz has done though. But yeah, thanks for mentioning it. Let's zoom on to Puma Punku. This is, by the way, this one's from Indonesia. This is just a massive footprint that this guy's standing next to, West Java, Indonesia. I talked to the guy a guy on Facebook who has been there. And so I have his information if anyone wants to find out where that is. This is a do-it-yourself network. These people are coming to their new home, and someone noticed that this looks like toes, giant toes, that they're in between these giant toes. So anyway, I'm going to stop share, and so yeah, let's get to Puma Punku and Tiwanaku. I'm super excited to see what you found up there, Mike.
Yeah, that was an interesting adventure. We went during the height of COVID. I traveled all through COVID. It was great. We got We'd buy the cheapest tickets and we get entire rows to ourselves.
Wow.
Nobody was flying. It was also really great to explore sites because we had these places all to ourselves. When I got to Puma Punku and Tiwanaku, it's not far from La Paz at all. We did a, couple hour drive or something, if I remember correctly, up into the top of the Andes there. It was great because we had the site all to ourselves. There was no one around. In fact, Puma Punku was closed. They had the gate shut. It was completely closed.
Oh my God.
Tiwanaku was the only one that was open. So we went into Tiwanaku,
Yeah.
we explored, we filmed there, and then I went to talk to the museum. They have a little museum down there with some interesting stuff. It was closed also. And so I had gone down because they had this gathering of elders for the area because they were doing some kind of ritual ceremony or something out there. They were all in their garbs and the outfits, these traditional outfits out there waiting. They were practicing some ceremony. And so I was able to connect with this lady who was kind of overseeing the sites. And so I'm sitting there talking to her on this low stone wall. And the instructions to my buddies was to get the drone up over Tiwanaku to film it, but make sure to keep it high enough that you couldn't hear it. I'm talking to her and I'm trying to get permission to go into the museum and look and maybe even possibly film.
Yeah.
And I hear this, I hear the drone and I'm like, oh no, they're coming way too close, right? And I see her kind of look, we're facing each other and she kind of looks like, what is that? And they keep getting closer and she looks around again. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what my buddies were thinking, but the drone just comes flying like 30 feet, maybe 30 feet, 20 feet off the ground, right down the center strip of the town, directly overhead of us. And
Holy.
she looks up and she's just like, really? And she looks over at me and she's like, is that yours? And there's just no way out of it. I'm like, yeah, it's mine. She's like, all right, come here. We got brought into the local office up there. I tried to work a little charm on her. She was agreeable. We agreed to share footage with them, and then they allowed us into Puma Punku, and they went over and opened the gates and let us in. Let us fly the drone over it. I have drone footage of Puma Punku with no one, and Tiwanaku, no one around. It was
Wow.
pretty amazing. We got some unique shots. This exact design I've found in Lebanon and other places, carved into the stones in the exact same way.
We have two theories. One is the archaeological orthodoxy telling us that these are stones that were carved by primitives. And then we have another theory, which is the alternative archaeologists saying that these are concrete, molded concrete. So what do you think?
I think South America definitely lends more than some other places to the idea of geopolymers or poured stone, especially when you start looking at places like Machu Picchu or different places like Sacsayhuaman, where everything looks poured and molded. But then not only that, but you start taking into consideration the placement of the final structure and what it would have required to get some of these massive stones up on top of these mountains. I'm not really the type of person that wants to like put my foot firmly in one camp as far as, whether it's Sage Wall and being geopolymer or any of these other places around the world, because I don't want to get locked into one mode of thinking. I want to be open to exploring the different ideas. So even with Sage Wall, like we were talking about earlier, I do want to stress that I'm not suggesting that I absolutely think that the Sage Wall is geopolymer or something like that. I've just pointed out in my videos that some of it looks very interesting and along those lines. And I want to explore those paths. And I think it's important to kind of leave that, especially in terms of my role being a documenter. I try to present things in such a way that it leaves the viewer, that it's not influencing the viewer's opinion.
Right.
So I really do, when I share my thoughts on sites, try to stress that this is my opinion, and I don't want to lock the viewer into a specific mode of thinking. My greater focus is to hopefully generate and stimulate the viewer's own thought processes in terms of coming up with their own ideas, because that's how you get new, unique ideas that contribute to the work and the conversation. You also, at the same time, you can't help but connect the dots of a lot of these different places, right? Sometimes you have to call a spade a spade. There are very different, unique types of stoneworking in places like Peru and Bolivia compared to some other places around the world. even like Egypt and Baalbek in terms of the shaping of the stone. Now, I say that, but then you also have examples of things like in Egypt, the casing stones around the pyramid. A lot of those look very rounded and poured in the way they're fit together, and they have nubs on them and all sorts of stuff that look like a whole part of the process. You know, we've been trying to figure out how they stacked multi-ton blocks into a pyramid shape for a very long time. And if they had the understanding of concrete and concrete blocks, how much easier would it have been to create molds that they poured this concrete into, allowed it to shape and get these perfect blocked stones. A pyramid would have been much easier to create if you understood how to pour concrete that basically solidifies into a perfect stone that would last thousands of years. That seems much easier than lifting megaton blocks up to the levels that they did in Egypt. So I certainly am enjoying the process of documenting as much as I can so people can kind of see a wide array of stuff from around the world as I continue to kind of go from continent to continent.
100%. Well, this is the top of the Great Pyramid in Egypt on the Giza Plateau, and I just wanted to mention that people think that all the blocks that the Egyptians put up for these larger pyramids on the Giza Plateau are all the same shape, but you can see these are slightly different shaped blocks and slightly different sized blocks. So there's an asymmetrical construction to these blocks. Whether they were cut natural stone or whether they're concrete is a different issue. But I just wanted to bring that up to people to let people see that the construction is with asymmetrical blocks is an earthquake mitigation, a brilliant earthquake mitigation technique.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys can see, I mean, you even have some small examples here from Lebanon. This is in Fakra of little nubs and stuff, but you can see the half pattern here at the top of this structure that's comparable to this one in Tiwanaku. You know, you have little nubs and stuff down here, but up here you have, you know, kind of a half shape, and this block looks incomplete, but a half shape comparable to the one found in Tiwanaku. This is in Fakra, Lebanon.
I feel it's similar pattern here in Egypt and
Yeah.
Italy. So I feel it's pretty much the same pattern. From what you showed us, it looks like, I don't know, the shape of a step pyramid or something like that. But I can see this pattern repeats all across the world, and it's not the only one, not the last pattern to repeat like this. We can find a ton of similarities between those cultures.
Mm-hmm. And I'll share one more with you here and get back to the Tiwanaku and Puma Punku. But this is in Byblos down at the bottom, in Arizona there at the top. You know, you see some of these things just really stick out to you as you go around the world.
Well, you are a world traveler, so this is what's great about your personal journey in your life, is that you've been to so many sites and you can make these connections.
Yeah, they really, as you start paying attention, you know, I started understanding the importance of, you know, when I first started, I was trying to get as many videos out of each trip as I could. And now I extend these trips a little bit longer so I can spend longer at a site, which the rare times that somebody's traveling with me that's not interested in ancient sites, it's got to be very annoying, because I could spend all day at a site that most people will walk through in an hour.
Yeah.
But now I've also refined my filming process. When we started, we were carrying around just a whole Pelican case full of gear with lavaliers and big camera and tripods and all sorts of stuff. And I just, you know, I knew that I needed to simplify. And so now I can walk a site with a day bag or a sling bag with my drone and my iPhone, a battery pack, and I film everything on my iPhone now. And it just brings up, I do want to make a point for anybody who's out there traveling. If you're going to ancient sites, there's a trend that's starting to happen at these ancient sites around the world. They're starting to recognize the amount of people that are coming to places as YouTubers or content creators that are bringing on in full setups for filming.
Right.
And they don't allow it anymore. They don't allow it, or you'll have to pay some huge fee or different things like that. So, for example, I've been to Chichen Itza many times.
Yeah.
And there was no problem. Nobody ever checked anything the first time I went there. The last time that I went, I couldn't even bring a GoPro in. They let me bring a GoPro in with no attachments. I couldn't even have a handle on it. And the microphone attachment that I had on it, I had to get rid of that. I had lavaliers. They wouldn't let me come in with that. And that visiting that site and what they were doing there ultimately is what really, I already had thought about it, but really is what firmed me up in terms of filming with the iPhone.
Okay.
Because they'll let you film all day with an iPhone, which now these phones are so advanced, they're better than my phone. My iPhone uh, films better than the GoPros, and you can film in
Yeah.
low light now, which the GoPro is just horrible at. At least it
Yeah.
has. I haven't used it in over a year, so
Yeah.
just be aware of that. If my budget now per year for camera equipment just consists of upgrading my phone. So,
Maybe we could spend some time on Baalbek, unless you want to have your other
yeah,
photos from Bolivia.
I have this pulled up, so I'll just share this with you real quick, and then I can go over to Baalbek.
Sure, sure, sure.
But I'll just show you guys some of the footage that I was able to take at Puma Punku by drone.
I thought, oh, he probably is a little proprietary about that footage, so I didn't ask you for it, but I'm so glad you're going to share it with us.
My content and footage gets ripped off, so I don't even try to track it down. There's so many channels that just take my content and talk over it and do their own thing. I would spend all day, every day trying to track that stuff down if I cared, and I really don't. But if it's used for like a television show or something for profit,
Right.
you do have to get permission for that. I mean, they legally have to get permission. So,
100%.
but as you can see, we got the site all to ourselves, and we just sat on the outside of it and ran the drone over all of this. We were able to just get right up on, I mean,
Yeah.
this was so, I was like a kid in a candy store. I wish that at the time I was traveling with a guy that I had helping out with filming, and I didn't know the drone yet. And so when we parted ways, I took over drone and just practiced until I learned it well enough. I wish that I had been flying it back then, because I would have gotten it so just up on all of this, you know. I really push the limits nowadays. It was very interesting going here and then seeing the layout of everything, because everything up to this point that I'd seen about Puma Punku, it felt very different when I got there from what I saw on TV up to that point. But you can see this structure of the area that's still, you know, a lot of it being excavated. You can see all around like there was this complex here, and I've seen some good recreations of what this all used to be.
Yeah.
But this is also way up in the Andes. You're very high up. The air is very thin, and you know that's the town.
Okay.
And off in the distance over there, those mounds, that's Tiwanaku.
Okay.
And so they're very close. Tiwanaku's right there, and basically where we're at, the drone is at right here, right below it is Puma Punku.
Right. Puma Punku is just a tad bit south of Tiwanaku.
I mean, it's this far, literally.
Yeah.
So you could walk it in no time.
Right.
It takes, you know, less than a minute to drive from the entrance over here to here.
Right.
Down just one main road. But
now, there's a theory that this site was destroyed by an earthquake, and that sort of makes sense. What do you think? That all these blocks used to be sort of more set up than they are.
Yeah, you know, I think I've read that this area used to be a dock, that Lake Titicaca used to extend all the way out to this area.
Okay.
And that there was a port city right there.
Interesting.
I think Graham Hancock goes over that in some of that in his book, Fingerprints of the Gods.
Yeah, Lake Titicaca is about 15 miles west of there, because that's about where the Peruvian border is with Bolivia. So it must have. So I guess the theory is that it was 15 miles or so further to the east.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and we didn't get to go to the places that I wanted to go to up there. So I didn't get to go to Lake Titicaca and explore some of the areas around that,
Right.
which was, you know, but I'll tell you what, one of the places that I'm wanting to go back to the most, and most of the time, as of right now, Sagewell is the only place that I've gone back to do more do more work. You know, I've really been focusing when I started out my kind of career in this and the channel and everything was getting a wide variety of places, which is why I've traveled so much to all these different sites. And usually I don't pick something that I've a place to go back to, but Peru was one of the first trips I went on, and I absolutely did not know what I was doing. I was just filming with the GoPro. It was the first trip that I went on and decided to try to make videos out of. And if I can't wait to go back and give it its proper due in terms of documenting everything there. I mean, Peru, you could just go to Cusco and just explore around Cusco for a month and be happy without going anywhere else in the country. It's just amazing down there, and that extends into Bolivia. And Bolivia has so much amazing stuff to look at as well. And Bolivia has some amazing natural features that are just beyond awesome to really explore also. You know, I did want to share this comparison photo with you guys because these are always mentioned in terms of the largest megalithic uncut stones in the world. Usually it's Baalbek that takes number one, but Yangshan and Aswan Quarry are all in there. Now you can see on each one of these shots. Here's Aswan Quarry,
Yeah.
and that's me there. This is Baalbek. And then this is Yangshan, and I'm right here, if you can see.
Yeah.
So Baalbek is widely considered the largest stone. And as you can see, this piece here just completely shatters that narrative, in my opinion. The stones there at Yangshan are just, they're massive. And these cuts go all the way underneath. There's another one right here that's blocked by the grass, the tall grass here. But
Yeah.
just like these two cuts, there's a third one that goes under right here, down the length of it, right? Now, there's two other massive pieces back here behind the trees. And I do have a drone video of Yangshan Quarry there in China that shows the entire site very clearly. So, you know, if anybody's watching and wants to explore Yangshan, which I highly recommend because I feel like it's kind of, again, criminally overlooked in terms of its, you know, place in ancient history and where, you know, how it should be considered. But that stone just dwarfs both of these other sites. And you know, I don't think that the descriptions of Yangshan Quarry in terms of the largest stones, its estimation on size and weight, I can't see how that's accurate when you look at these together in comparison. So that's a lot of fun to get into. It's been very exciting to have those to compare. And each of these sites are very unique in their own ways because they all have multiple examples of stoneworking and tool marks and different things like that, some more than others. And in my opinion, I'll just let that lead us into Baalbek because in my opinion, Baalbek is just the crown gem of the ancient world in terms of what it has to offer when it comes to all these little details that we've been talking about for the last hour and a half plus. If there was somebody out there thinking about, well, I want to go to the most amazing singular site, because there's a lot of places that have Egypt has everything all over the place. You could spend months there exploring all the different places in Egypt. But if you were picking one singular site, it's in terms of just being overwhelmed and awed, it's hard to pass up Baalbek, in my opinion. Now, other people may have a different opinion of that. They may have been more impressed by walking up on the Great Pyramids in Egypt, or maybe different sites in Peru and stuff like that. And I can totally see that. But Baalbek was just, after going to all these places, Baalbek was just absolutely incredible. You have to walk around the outside perimeter all the way to the back, and it's a good distance. It's a nice little hike. It is paved, and there's a trail that leads you back there. And if you follow that, it will take you all the way around to the back. And on the inside of this is the entire area and courtyard and area. I think Temple of Jupiter is right over here. And the ground level is going to be up here somewhere in this range.
Academia is telling us that these blocks are cut stone that were dragged there or somehow moved there by primitives. Now, what about the idea that these were cast concrete, cast in place, cast in situ?
You know, we've got all of these wonderful examples that I think are more plausible for something like that, because we have the example of the stones being cut just a mile down the road at the quarry with the unfinished and unremoved cut stones there at the quarry. You know, to kind of dive into that topic just a little bit more, I think one idea doesn't always negate another. There's the possibility that we have these examples of all these different types of workings around the world, whether it's geopolymer, it's this ability to cut and move these megalithic stones. We have these different examples of working stone in such massive and impressive ways. So there might have been multiple techniques using all over because, you know, when you look at a wall like Sacsayhuaman, and then you look at a wall like this, they're very different. They're both megaliths, but they're very different in terms of how it looks like they were created or formed. One very rough cut, hewn out stone here, like at Baalbek, and then a wall like Sacsayhuaman that looks like it's poured perfectly together and shaped in these incredible types of overlapping and odd structures and angles and stuff, right? Not
Right.
square. So very different, you know. I think you know, if I was going to make an argument for geopolymer, I would definitely stick to South America.
Is it common knowledge that successors of other civilizations found the sacred places of the ancients and built on top of them, just like we see here in the case of Baalbek with the Romans? Do you think they built on top of a more ancient settlement?
I think that's something that happened all over the world because you have clear examples of as you move up, the abilities of the workers or the builders becoming less and less refined and capable.
Absolutely.
So the base of these structures is more advanced than the tops, the middles and tops. And sometimes you have multiple layers of, let me see if I have a better shot of this.
It's very interesting considering the advancement of the Romans and all the stonework they left as legacies. I mean, there are still paved roads dating back from the time of the Romans that are still in pretty good shape. You can still ride a car on them, and the use of algae in the concrete. So they made the concrete last for thousands of years. So it's really incredible to think of cultures that predated them that were at least on the same level of sophistication as they were.
You know, I think a recent explanation for Roman concrete being their use of these large lime chunks and deposits that would basically act as band-aids or fillers. So, you know, as the road might break apart over time, cracks or things would form that would allow rainwater in that would dissolve the limestone over time, and that limestone would spread and fill those cracks, thereby making a self-healing road. And that's why those Roman roads have lasted for so long. Isn't that amazing?
Well,
Genius.
yeah, it's incredible.
These different sized blocks. I always think of earthquake mitigation whenever I see the different.
Yeah.
Baalbek was just an absolute kind of candy shop for any kind of person looking for all these different examples of a lot of fun. I spent 2 days there, and I could have spent a week.
I love those. I love those roundish stones amongst the other
Yeah.
ones. Fantastic.
Yeah, right. Just fitted right in.
It just had nothing better to do than be intricate and meticulous. Whoever they were, you know, it's fantastic.
Yeah, why not? We can. So why not?
Exactly. This is what I always think, you know.
And that's a corner right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
And then you have these symbols, which remind me very much of, you know, sacred geometry type stuff.
He's got those insets which really feel like concrete to me because it's so hard to just to chisel out insets like that. Those
Right.
square insets.
beautiful stuff.
I'm like a just tiny thing in the midst of all this. You know, it's pretty awesome. Imagine for 1 second what this looked like and it's finished in pristine form, and
Yeah,
the society and culture that inhabited this space.
yeah,
What that would do to you as a person, you know, it's to live amongst this type of stuff, everything that we there's no style or soul put into any kind of design anymore. We walk through our cities in these block towers of steel and glass that with nothing around us that's inspiring, and any art piece that inhabits a corner of a city or in a park is just nonsense and mess. Nothing of the creative ability and styles of people from the past exists anymore, is created anymore. Nothing that you walk on and you just, as you're passing by, stop and take a minute to just appreciate in
Yeah.
modern art or
Yeah.
design or architecture. So
Mhm.
just think about the effects of that on people. Um, you know, to be inspired on a day-to-day basis to be around this type of beauty and magnificence. We've scaled everything down in our culture and society to just practicality and usefulness and time, of time to construct something. You know, we work on such a minute scale now of turning things over so quickly that we don't create anything like this anymore.
Well, I just want to show you pictures from Baalbek. This is a screenshot from a video. He talks about geopolymer as a possibility. And I put some text in there because I feel like, because academia calls this a quarry, but we have soft layers of material in between the blocks that make it look like they're placed there as part of a structure that's very oddly not horizontal, but several degrees away from the horizontal. But it looks like construction rather than, oh, we're going to quarry these natural blocks. In other words, to me, it looks like these are concrete blocks that were placed there, and that the archaeological orthodoxy misdiagnosed this as a quarry, but it all looks constructed because we have the soft material between the harder blocks that would serve as earthquake mitigation.
I can show you up close shots of that in between section right here. I
Cool.
have it.
Yeah, bring it. See, this is what we need. We need conversation and we need evidence, and that's what we're doing right now. So this is good.
And that's between those two main blocks. I think if I had the ability to pour, and you can, this is the underside of the main, the stone of the pregnant woman, where it looks like they were trying to remove that top stone. And I think a lot of these were made in the position that they were made and at angles, so that once it was quarried away, they could slide it into a place and leverage it up for movement, if that makes sense. Whereas if it was flat, as they removed the stone underneath, it would have just fallen flat on the ground. They would have had to figure out a way to wedge it back up and then leverage it. But by creating it at the same, the whole area slopes downwards as far as the core of these main pieces. And I guess that kind of just insinuates to me that they would have cut it free and it would have slid down into a place where they could then, I guess, tilt it over and move it somehow. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think if you had the ability to pour concrete at a size like this,
Yeah.
why would you not do it in place at the site where it's going to go? You can see there where they're being cut away, but you can see also where I was just showing a minute ago where it's still attached. Now, this is what's great about the site is you can see all the different examples of the process. Hopefully, they keep doing excavation, which nothing was happening while I was there, because the larger stone that's beneath the ground level there, that's
Right.
now exposed, didn't used to be exposed, and there's more down there
Right.
um, that hasn't been exposed yet. But you can see all the areas here around the stone where other things have been removed and cut out. There's marks like this all over the ground, squares and block shapes of other examples of where things were removed previously. That's back at Baalbek.
That's awesome,
Oh,
dude.
oh,
There's
that's
this,
huge in the background.
yeah, there's this
It's
whole wall
freaking
of these
huge.
massive stones before you get to the trilithons.
I absolutely love this name, Wandering Wolf. And he's got the wolf print. We all need to be wandering wolves, okay? We all need to get out there on the land and share with our friends our little videos that we made, and we'll have a conversation. That's what we're here for, okay? That's what humanity should be doing, and that's what science is. Science is a conversation among persons with evidence. If we don't have a conversation, then science just stops in its tracks. And so let's keep asking questions. Let's keep having fun. Science is fun. In school, you sat in the classroom and you thought that was science, but it wasn't science. That was sitting in the classroom. Science is getting in the lab. Science is going outside and investigating, engaging with your open mind. What a fantastic adventure, right? So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your amazing footage and your amazing photos and your amazing experiences with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. It was an absolute pleasure. And I will say, if you guys check me out on YouTube, show me a little love on Rumble. They're better to their creators over there, noticeably. And but I put both all my content up on Rumble and YouTube now. It's Wandering Wolf in both places. I think on you can find me at Wandering Wolf Productions or Wandering Wolf on Rumble, and then Twitter is my other big platform. So yeah, and there's always a new adventure coming. I'm sitting on like 4 to 5 terabytes of filmed footage that I haven't edited yet. So there's so much still coming from
Whoa.
Egypt to Lebanon to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Angkor Wat,
Whoa.
Scotland, and all sorts of different places. I'm working hard to get all that content out, and I'm glad that you guys have enjoyed it. And thank you so much for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed having all these conversations and discussing all this stuff. It was a lot of fun, guys.
Awesome. Well, do you have any
Mike.
last words of wisdom for our audience? I mean, can you sum up your wisdom on the subject of ancient history for us?
Keep asking questions. There's no wrong answers. I think if you keep exploring, don't be afraid to make a mistake or two along the way. Those are guiding points to help keep us moving towards our goals and stuff, right? Set a goal, get out there, find something you're passionate about, and just keep going after it. But ask questions. That's my biggest hope in everything that I'm doing, and all the footage that I'm sharing, is that hopefully it inspires people to maybe take one trip that they didn't think they could do, or maybe go out and start hiking their areas. They're very, they've been exploring for a long time, but now they start taking pictures and contributing and posting them, and maybe make some connections with other people, and find yourself a community of other people to bounce your ideas off of that are supportive. Yeah.
I think everybody should go check out Wandering Wolf. And as J.R.R. Tolkien told us, not all who wander are lost. Let's hope we have more great guests on here like Mike on Archaic Knowledge podcast. Thank you for being our very first guest. We are honored to have had you.
Absolutely. Wishing you guys nothing but success.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you, Mike.